Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. We've been talking about Hitler for the last 15 minutes. Aren't you sorry you missed that, everybody watching?
It's like the History Channel before it started talking about aliens.
Yeah, it's, you know what it's like. Yeah, boy, talk about a mixed blessing there. Remember, like 30 years ago, we were all like, I wish the History Channel would talk about something other than World War II. And now it's like, God damn it, I wish they would do a show about World War II or
Somebody
something.
found the genie that grants the wish you think you asked.
Steve, as it comes to that, back in the late 50s and early 60s, there were a couple of great series out there. One of them you're almost certainly familiar with, which is, of course, Victory at Sea.
Oh, sure.
I used to watch that with my dad all the time. There was another one that was really more focused on the European theater of operations and the contributions of Winston Churchill. And the only thing I can remember about it is it was sponsored by a diet drink called Metrical. But they just had such great stuff in that. And for the life of me, I can't think of the name of the darn thing. But they dug into the European theater of World War II like nobody else has before or since. It was a terrific show.
What did you guys think of Band of Brothers? What about
I never got into it that deeply, but for what I saw of it, I thought that was straight out of the Saving Private Ryan school of filmmaking. Yeah. It just spared no sensibilities whatsoever. It was going to show you World War II whether you liked it or not.
And it had David Schwimmer playing an incompetent soldier.
I will say the Pacific is certainly better, but see, Tom Hanks likes to do these like side projects because before he did that, he did From Earth to the Moon, which was
and
that's my personal favorite, but I have a pre-existing affection for the source material. Like I'm more naturally interested in space program history than World War II history. But I thought From the Earth to the Moon
you'd probably be a
fantastic.
big fan of this Star Trek show.
Yeah,
what is it now?
Star Trek. From the Earth to the Moon maybe once every, not quite once a year maybe, but it's just so refreshing, and just that he went to looking for things that you don't ordinarily think about. And I still think one of the most extraordinary episodes was, I think, the second to last one where he talks about the women, because they had to be the mostly ignored element of the whole, moonshot project.
Yeah. Although I feel like in some of those, whether it's Apollo 13 or From Earth to the Moon, sometimes they portray the women as like these like emotional props that I didn't really like. But then if you watch First Man, and if you watch Neil Armstrong's wife, she certainly has more emotion that fits her character.
First Man did a good job with it, yeah.
Because in Apollo 13, I just basically see Marilyn Lovo, who's Jim Lovo's wife, is like this like basket case, like and it's like you don't really get that in First Man. Like Miss Armstrong like knows her husband does a dangerous job, but we're not hit over the head with it.
Yeah.
Well, and to be fair to Apollo 13, something had gone horribly wrong.
She did have a reason to be upset. Yeah, she was. They had found out that Ron Howard was going to direct the movie about Apollo 13, and they're like, God damn it. No, but in the new TV series, it's a few years old now, but the more recent TV series based on The Right Stuff. That's something that they do a pretty good job with, of depicting the wives and giving them like their own space in the story, so they're not just appendages to their husbands. They actually have their own things to do, and I mean, overall, that's not an outstanding series. I thought it was just mostly kind of okay, but it does do some things differently than, for instance, the movie based on The Right Stuff did, and that's one of them. Is it really carves out space for the female characters, and
that is a ringing endorsement.
Very well with that.
Yeah.
Mostly
Steve?
okay.
Well, I mean, The Right Stuff movie is one of my favorite movies ever, so it's like it has a certain,
Steve, as it comes to Ron Howard, and by way of maybe showing him in somewhat of a better light, have you seen Rush?
I don't think I have actually.
Okay,
Never been a fan of Rush. No, I haven't.
Not even the music.
No, the reason why I bring it up, this Rush is the story of the contretemps between God, now I can't even think. Is James Hunt, who is a Formula One driver, and Niki Lauda.
Okay.
And it's a fascinating story because it's
got Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan.
It shows two people. Two people with completely different approaches to the business of Formula One driving. Niki Lauda is absolutely an objectivist. He wants 20% risk, not a bit more. He's absolutely maniacal about going after the Ferrari he's driving and trying to get every last ounce out of it. Meanwhile, Hunt is one of these guys who he wants to live at 10 tenths. He's a womanizer. He's a drinker. He's also damned fast. And the way that I think Howard presents them is not only very realistic, but as I understand it, Lauda saw it before he died, and yeah, he gave it his approval. Hunt couldn't have done it because actually Hunt died I think a couple of years after he finally did win a Formula One championship.
Oh wow! I will say this about Ron Howard: I would watch one of his movies 5 times in a row before I would watch one of Baz Luhrmann's movies.
I have no idea who Baz Luhrmann
is. Baz Luhrmann is like, well, Baz Luhrmann, he directed the Leonardo DiCaprio, Claire Danes, Romeo and Juliet, and
Great Gatsby.
Rouge, Great Gatsby from with Leonardo and
most recently.
And
recent Gatsby, I didn't.
And most recently, I was trying to think of the other people in Gatsby. It's Leonardo DiCaprio, Carey Mulligan, and of course Tobey Maguire. Who is the reason to see it. But anyway, and just recently he directed a new Elvis movie, which is garbage.
I never cared for Elvis to begin with anyway, so
you can keep
whether you like Elvis.
I think if you cared for Elvis, you might not like it either. Like, it's just I'll tell you what, it's the kind of movie, if you are interested in Elvis, either as a musician or a historical figure or a human being, whatever it is, if you have any interest in Elvis at all, you can watch Baz Luhrmann's Elvis movie and come away from it having not learned a single interesting thing about Elvis.
I will say I've only seen a couple clips of it, but I did like the bit where you have Tom Hanks' character and the others, and they hear him on the radio. It's like, that's the thing. He's white.
He's white.
He's white, and you can practically see the dollar signs pop out of their eyes.
And honestly, I'm surprised Baz Luhrmann didn't actually have cartoon dollar signs appear in his eyes, because that's the kind of filmmaker Baz Luhrmann is. But yeah. Anyway, Isaiah, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah. Well, piggybacking on Ron Howard, I love Apollo 13. Like, I like Jim Lovell, but his family, I'm sorry, it's just like his family in the movie was portrayed just too annoying for me. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The daughter was like this, she was like a hippie, or I don't know.
I feel bad when I say when I talk shit about Apollo 13, because it's not a bad movie. At all. Yeah. It's a very good movie. I saw it in the theater and I liked it a lot. And when we reviewed it for Late Seating a few years ago, it was the first time I had watched it in a while. And it's a really good movie. But it's like, I think I said at the time when we did it for the podcast, it's like the actual event of Apollo 13 is one of the most incredible things that ever happened. Mm-hmm. Like, astronauts were out in space halfway to the moon, and part of their ship blew up, and we were somehow able to talk them safely around the moon and back to Earth, and they got back okay. That's incredible. That's unbelievable. And the movie is pretty good.
The movie,
Steve, I love The Well of Death because it's a family favorite of ours, so that's why Ron Howard at least has that. But I can see how someone else's experience with Ron Howard movies is that they're pretty good, and it's as a director, I'm trying to think.
We are just shitting all over Ron Howard today, aren't we? You know what? He's also not very attractive anymore.
I'm sure as a human being, he's a lovely person, and he would be, and he's a very gracious and giving artist, and I have nothing personal against. I've never heard a single horror story about Ron Howard.
Oh yeah,
about him like abusing people on the set or being an asshole to actors. Or I mean, as far as I've ever heard, he's a lovely guy and is easy to get along with. And yeah, seems like a good dude. So I have nothing against him. I just he's one of those guys. And honestly, you know what? If you hire Ron Howard and say, make me a movie with this amount of money in this amount of time, when that amount of time is over, Ron Howard will have a movie for you.
Make a movie about the Challenger disaster. I want to see what that would be.
Please don't hire Ron Howard to make a movie about the Challenger.
Okay, but don't hire Roland Emmerich either. Because
oh god, no! Definitely don't hire Roland Emmerich.
I was gonna say,
I think Michael Bay could do a good job with it. He's really good at explosions.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus Christ!
Roland Emmerich. I bet if some studio did put out feelers and say, "Hey, we want to make a movie about the Challenger disaster," I'm sure Roland Emmerich would come in with a pitch. And I would hope that the executives would just listen politely and then just kind of go, no.
It's like, okay, but then the Mariana Trench opens up and starts sucking the ship down.
As it takes off, the tower collapses behind
it.
Roland.
No, Roland.
The wreckage of the Challenger didn't hit a major American city.
The Challenger's not going to crash into the Great Pyramid. That's not going to happen.
No. The characters are all going to outrun super cold. That'll be the climax of the movie.
I mean, look, I
what if there's a wolf on the ship? That's what
I can't look. I can't really fault Moonfall for like taking into account that if the actual like real moon started coming towards Earth, it wouldn't hit us like a baseball. It would be shredded a little bit by Earth's gravity and just be like a worldwide meteor shower. So they had to make it a giant space station. Like, okay, all right, that was kind of smart. I admit.
As in, that's no moon; it's a space station.
Yes, that is the plot of the movie.
Yeah, that was sort of.
I love that the thought is, okay, look, it's unrealistic if we have the moon just hit the Earth in one piece. Oh, I know how to fix it. Let's make the moon a giant space station.
Yeah,
that's more realistic.
I look at that, and I mean, they recognized the Roche limit. That's about as much as they did. Beyond that, deorbiting the moon like that would take so much freaking energy. It's ludicrous. And coming back to the Challenger thing, though, Steve, there was a sort of a docudrama thing that was done some time back that I caught. I've forgotten where, like Netflix or something, that talked about Richard Feynman's contribution to the analysis of the Challenger disaster. And I thought that was terrific. I mean, there've been a couple of movies out there about that, but that one I thought just topped the list.
It's funny you mentioned that. I watched. There's I think it's a 4-part documentary series about the Challenger on Netflix. And I started watching it like a few months ago, and then I got distracted and didn't, but yesterday I watched the last, I think, 2 episodes of it. And the last episode deals with the Rogers Commission and the investigation into what happened. And it highlights Feynman, because Feynman was the one who did like a sort of at-home practical test with the material that they used to make the O-rings that that joined the solid boosters to the fuel tank, and he was the one who sort of demonstrated that if that material gets cold, even after it warms up, it can become brittle, and that, as it turns out, is what contributed to the accident. Was that it was a cold
and it's interesting too, because I saw the redesign of those O-rings, and actually they don't join it so much as they provide a seal between segments. And when they did a redesign, they doubled up on the O-rings. So you I mean, and almost certainly they've got a different material for those O-rings, a far more ductile material with a much better coefficient of temperature and ductility as a function of temperature.
Well, I mean, it's not like you have to worry about cold weather anymore. So,
hey, Steve, this is kind of random, but what did you think of people swearing in Andor, like actually saying shit instead of poodoo?
I thought it was great.
I've only caught the first episode, but the first episode is like no real first episode I've seen out of any Star Wars. I mean, it's almost reserved in how it approaches things. But there are 2 more episodes to catch, and at some point or other through this week, I expect I'm going to dig into that.
If any time you show me characters in sci-fi fantasy just acting like normal people, instead of where you can tell that the writers have gone out of their way to be like, they're different, you know, it's the future, or it's Middle Earth, or it's the Star Wars galaxy. They don't act like we do. Like, oh, just miss me with all of that shit. Just have them act like people, please.
You know, and Steve, that's a lot of what you got with the original A New Hope. You had a used galaxy, a used universe, and people who basically, you know, treated it as though it was their home. It was nothing unusual. And, you know, and that was that.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell you what, that's a lot of what I think sold the original Star Wars.
Absolutely.
I mean, and that's why people like The Expanse so much too.
Very much. Yes.
Something I just wanted to touch upon. I mean, look, I do still enjoy fish out of water scenarios and imagining things like alien encounters. But we have in Rings of Power with the Stranger, as they call him, he's just young Gandalf. It's like, hey, how would essentially an angel who's only been immortal for a few days act? You know, oh, he'd basically be a big baby who can't talk and accidentally knocks things over. And it's like, I don't know, I kind of like that stuff. So weird as it is.
Sure. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I just, you know, but yeah,
you want real people to like speak real people.
People, just have people act like people. Yeah. And I'll tell you another thing I liked about Andor. I don't think I like it as much as some people do. Like I've seen people on Twitter like going absolutely out of their head for it. Like, oh, Andor is the greatest Star Wars thing ever. I thought I've liked it so far. Like I still think.
Wait. Sources. Who said that Andor is the greatest?
I have seen, there are people I follow on Twitter and Instagram. And now granted,
why do you follow people like that?
Steve is polite and follows a lot of people, honestly.
Granted.
Steve is polite?
Okay, so
I'm just saying these are like super fans, right? These aren't necessarily like thoughtful, you know, critics. These are people that are just, they love Star Wars and you know, they're watching the show and they're like, this is amazing.
So Andor is not headlined by a woman and doesn't have a black person in it.
That's right. So they love it.
Oh,
they love it. And I mean,
no. That doesn't stop people going after this, because the lead is still a person of color.
That's
so you
true.
Still have guys like Geeks and Gamers going, this is just woke diversity bullshit.
It's like nothing has even happened yet. What are you complaining about?
No, I will say one of the most fascinating characters to me is I guess the villain. It's so strange to see an honest Imperial. Like, he's still a bad guy, he's still a fascist, but he's a younger guy, and he sincerely believes in this cause. He has dedicated everything about himself to it. Whereas most of the older Imperials are guys who just, you know, rode off the coattails of the Clone Wars and came from wealthy families and were just kind of handed their position.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's one of the reasons the Empire fell apart, was because it was mostly run by dipshits. So then you have this guy who is going above and beyond his station, and it's like, it's fascinating to see something with that drive.
I mean, they've done that with Thrawn in the sort of outside materials.
Yeah, I forget his name, but yeah, the villain in Andor, he's my favorite part of it so far.
But the thing about Thrawn is that the thing about Thrawn is that he's this super genius. You know, he can outpace everybody else. Here we have a guy who might not even be that smart. He's just incredibly driven and
determined.
Interesting.
Yeah. And you can see, I like the contrast. And calling him a true believer, I think, is apt, because you see that like his boss is basically just a bureaucrat who wants to cover his ass and be able to tell his superiors what they want to hear.
He's like, what? 2 of our guys died.
Yeah, and he's like, they were probably just they died, you know, defending somebody, and it was, you know, like he just wants to write it off and sweep it under the table.
Exactly. He wants to sweep it under the rug and get on with, you know, with being a jaded bureaucrat.
Exactly. And the younger guy,
he's got a comfy job, and that's all he cares about.
And the younger guy is like, but 2 of our people were murdered. We have to find out who did this, you know. And there's something, if not for the fact that he's on the evil side, like there's something kind of admirable about that. But then he also is obviously in over his head, and, you know, doesn't really have the respect of the people that work under him, you can tell, and isn't comfortable, you know, like giving orders and talking in front of people and trying to be the big shot, even though that's clearly who he wants to be.
That's another thing I appreciate is that he's neurodivergent. It is so strange to see a neurodivergent villain, because usually the villain is blamed on their autism or whatever.
Yeah.
But no, it's just something about this guy, but that's not like why he's evil. You could say maybe it makes him a little naive, but it's just interesting. And now to see how by the end of it, it's like now I can just see him chasing Andor throughout the series, and Andor becoming his white whale. Like he becomes obsessed with him. Like this is the biggest threat to the Empire.
I think after the first 3 episodes, he's the most potentially interesting Star Wars villain I've seen in a very, very long time. I think there's a lot. Yeah, he's just a really interesting character.
Cassie Philpin says he's Arnold Rimmer. Okay, now I have to see the show to see the comparison. I was expecting an H on his forehead as well. Isaiah, you had your hand up for the longest time. Do you remember your points?
Isaiah, yeah.
I want to ask you, okay, I want to ask the podcast a question about a movie. I want their opinion. What is you guys' opinion on the movie Species?
Never saw it.
I think it's entertaining schlock.
Okay,
it's a funny movie to me because most horror movies, they zero in on one specific fear we humans have. Alien, well, it's basically the sexual assault monster. That they try to make that with Species apparently, but then you have stuff like The Thing where it's like, oh, it's a fear of disease about like cutting yourself on something and then getting sick. Body horror, all this stuff. So what exactly is the fear of Species? Well, you could say it's the body horror of the, transforming whatever. But what about the guys? Is it what? Having to pay child support?
No!
About
I always confused that one in my head with Splice.
Oh, yes!
Which is dramatically similar plot-wise, but definitely has a different tone.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, Species was in the 90s. That's right, or the early 2000s. Yeah,
Species is it is what it is. It's fun to watch if you're in the right headspace for it. Like I wouldn't call it a good movie really, but it's I mean there's reasons to watch it. I mean Ben Kingsley's in it. And
Ben Kingsley was also in Blood Rain.
That's true. And
Ben Kingsley naked. That's all you need.
Ben Kingsley was also in Iron Man 3 as a total dweeb.
Ben Kingsley is also the only reason to watch Blood Rain, by the way. Ben Kingsley. Ben Kingsley is a great actor who occasionally slums it, and that's always fun for me to watch. It's nice to see.
I feel bad for the women in these movies. The monsters that are always a female who like grew in like 5 days and doesn't know shit about the world.
Oh yeah, born sexy yesterday.
But more like, how can you expect them to like know what to do with themselves or not turn into an evil monster or whatever when it's like they're born and then the world just attacks them in various ways?
Yeah, like why are we supposed to root against this person?
Although there have been instances where it was actually the man that was born yesterday. So you got Starman, and then you also
have Vision.
Blast from the Past with
I actually do enjoy.
And notice how they're not villains.
Yes. Well, there you go.
Starman wasn't the villain of Starman.
Although I'm partial to Blast from the Past because it's a comedy, so and Alicia Silverstone's in it. So who's
yes, Alicia Silverstone is it, and like Brandon Fraser.
You could probably lump Encino Man into that too.
It looks like
I do appreciate that by the end of the movie, he's all caught up and acts like a normal person, and just being like, "Dad, there was no bomb." I was like, "Oh, okay."
The Cold War's over. They even said we give up. Yep, that just happened.
Oh, what I mean is like it's a subtle acting change, but of course, like towards the beginning of for most of the movie, Brendan Fraser's character is really wide-eyed and like, oh gosh, and then by the end of it, he's like just as up to speed and jaded as everybody else.
What the fuck did you just call me?
Yeah, he did walk up to the first block and oh my god, hey Edward, what did you just call me?
Oh jeez.
Hello there. It was just like
my lucky stars.
Well, rather be called that than the other word.
And his reaction to when like Alicia Stone said like he's a dick. A what? A big giant walking in penis. That's word. That's what he is. And then he comes like, I just had this mental image in my head. That's a fair reaction to that phrase, honestly.
I'm really glad, Steve, you like Maverick.
I really liked it. Yeah.
Maverick was exceptionally well put together. I mean, it's way more nuanced than everything else. Although the business of Maverick pushing that SR-72 past Mach 10, I mean, has he learned nothing from his past? You know, apparently not.
Apparently not.
Well, it's Tom Cruise, and he's still a Scientologist, so...
Well, yeah, there's always that, but just the whole interaction between him and the rest of the team, never mind the supervisors who seem to think that this is just, a circle jerk and it's not going to work, et cetera, et cetera. It's just way more sophisticated. And I appreciate the daylights out of that.
Yeah, I was genuinely surprised by how much I liked it. I thought it was such a better movie than the original Top Gun. Like, not even close. It's such a better movie than the original Top Gun. And
I like
yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was saying I like how they actually gave them an actual mission that made sense, as opposed in the first movie where they were just dicking around with airplanes.
Yeah, and
they had to fight not Russians.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they did in the first movie. They did have a mission of protecting, a ship that had basically lost power and something had gone wrong. But that was far more amorphous than a specific mission with a specific target to accomplish specific things with a specific threat.
Although it's Tom Cruise. It's like they mixed Mission Impossible with Top Gun. And so that's kind of what I got.
That's not far off, I think. That is really not.
Although
they have no excuse about not deploying F-35s against an Su-57, that's ridiculous. I mean, you're not going to deploy a fourth generation fighter against a fifth like that and expect any kind of success. That's crazy.
Shoot.
I do think that it's a good. The Mission Impossible thing is probably smart, because I think it shows how much Tom Cruise takes a pretty heavy creative hand in his movies these days. Like, he's never credited as like a screenwriter or anything, but as a producer, he sort of, he's involved in guiding where the movie goes creatively. And I do think he has learned a lot about how to make a good action movie since 1986, 87, when the first Top Gun came out. And I think you can tell, because this one, Top Gun Maverick, is a really, really well put together screenplay, like just on a mechanical level. Like, it knows when to up the stakes. It knows how to keep, pushing Mavericks back further and further and further against the wall. And then, he has that moment where he breaks out and does the big, when he does the test course by himself to prove that it can be done. And he gives himself even less time than they've been training to do it in. And it's all really, really well put together, Yeah,
it's very good. I thought it was going to be just jingoistic bullshit, but I was surprised.
Yeah. The other thing about Cruise is he was willing to laugh at himself in Tropic Thunder. I mean, look at the character he portrayed. It was ridiculous. You want to talk about playing against type? There it is.
Yeah, I know. Like, I have to look again. It's like, joy, that is Tom Cruise. I heard he was in this movie, but it's like, there he is, as it were. I'll be honest, I thought you were talking about the different Maverick movie, the 1994 movie starring Mel Gibson and James Cameron.
Based on the TV show. Yeah, sure.
Yes.
That's good too.
It's a good
That's
movie
good too.
Yeah. But no, I actually did see the first Mission Impossible movie, which was in 98, I think, which is
something like 96, 97, something like that. Yeah.
It's back there. The one with John Voight.
Yeah. Still holds up though. Yeah. And then I think I did see the second one that John Woo directed, and it's a John Woo movie, so American John Woo movie. So if you know what to expect with American John Woo movies, I also have seen Paycheck.
There's going to be a scene with doves.
Yes, exactly. But the last mission, I skipped the third one. I just haven't seen it yet. But the last Mission Impossible movie, yeah, I agree with like what you said, Steve. It's like that was a really well done action movie. So if you were want to see that Mission Impossible movie because it looked like a cool, great action movie, no, yeah, you're going to get that. You're going to get
for sure.
That.
And now he's doing a two-parter, Dead Reckoning, and I get the feeling this may be, as far as Mission Impossible is concerned, it may be a swan song. I mean, first of all, let's be real about the fact that he's into his 60s now. I mean, certainly he's in excellent shape, but 60 years old, 60 plus years old is still 60 plus years old. And there's only so much of that he can, do any longer. The question is, what is he going to tackle from there? Because I mean, he's got range outside the action movies that he's, with the exceptions of something like Risky Business and Tropic Thunder, he really has that and Cocktail, which is a throwaway movie to begin with, I think. But the kid has range, and
that's
he
true.
Be able to use it.
The thing it's interesting to think
Why
about.
would he use range when he can make money?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing is like, I mean, something similar has happened with Harrison Ford as Harrison Ford has gotten older, because Harrison Ford in his prime was similar to Tom Cruise in the sense that he was a movie star. He wasn't just an actor, he was a movie star. And he had
a good actor, but movie star.
A very good actor, and had the ability to play outside of his typical type, but just didn't really do that very often. And he really hasn't. Like Harrison Ford has kind of gotten to a stage in his career where he doesn't really make that many movies anymore. He never really evolved into like a character actor,
No. Regarding Henry.
Well, I loved Regarding Henry. Regarding Henry was terrific.
But that was like 30 years ago. I mean, and he was still, and he was the lead in that.
Even Mark Hamill, like when he always tells the story that like when filming in Star Wars, that would be the scene just after they came out the garbage compactor, and Mark Hamill on set was like, they didn't film that scene yet. They were filming the scene afterwards, and he was like, wait a minute, I just came out of the garbage dump, and like, what? Shouldn't my hair be all just like matted and mangled and something like that? Which Harrison Ford said to him, "Kid, listen, this is not that kind of movie. If the audience members are paying attention to your hair, we're screwed. We have messed up royally if they're paying attention to that." So Mark Hamill has always said that like Harrison Ford would be a really good director if he wasn't lazy or something like that.
Yeah.
But Mark Hamill also says like, I don't talk like that.
Yeah. But like he's making another Indiana Jones movie. He made he came back and did Star Wars one more time. And he's kind of just, but he's happy to not do movies anymore because he made his money. And he's Harrison Ford, and and I feel like that. I mean, that's probably what will happen with Tom Cruise. I mean, he is a good actor. Tom Cruise I think is a very underrated actor, but more than an actor, he's a movie star. And I think when he gets to the point where he can't really be a movie star anymore, he'll probably just
that's why I
retire to the giant boat and run his slave company.
Exactly.
I remember there was I forget who it was.
He'll declare himself a sovereign nation.
I forget who it was, but there was one. Michael Caine. Yeah. People were asking him when he was like 95, like, "Hey, are you going to be in any more movies?" So he's like, "No, I'm like 90.
No.
This will probably be my last interview." He's like, "I'm just so tired."
Yeah. I mean, I think Harrison Ford's learned the lesson from his dad, Sean Connery, because like Sean Connery always wanted to like retire. He just didn't understand the script, so he passed on. It turned out to be The Matrix. He didn't understand the next script. He passed on. It turned out to be Lord of the Rings. So then he's like, okay, I didn't understand the last two scripts I look at, and they were big hits. So I'm going to like do this one as well. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So, and that was his last movie.
I like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. You accuse me of being a complete dweeb, but I liked it. And while I'm at it, let us give a nod here and now to Louise Fletcher, whom we just lost. Famous, if nothing else, for Nurse Ratched.
Yes.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Oh, that's a great movie. Great.
One of the great. I think one of the great Oscar-winning performances.
Oh, I agree.
She's just so good in that movie.
Yeah, and I was reading in that she was, you know, she was the last person they interviewed, and a lot of it had the fact of the people who went before were not willing to be that mean on screen. Yeah. And the fact that she was is what made that
absolute
movie.
bitch. I love it.
Yeah, she is, and it's great because Nicholson is so Nicholson in that movie.
Yes,
and he's Jack
Nicholson.
Well, but I mean, he's like, but because like he's Nicholson in Chinatown too, but he's like he's more restrained, and you know, but Nicholson in Cuckoo's Nest is like that's like peak Nicholson, you know.
Yes, it is.
And so he's like being Nicholson, and she, in response to him, is so cold.
Yes,
so unimpressed by everything he does, and so like just will not be rattled or moved by anything. And that's what makes that work, is that he's like, Jack Nicholson, hey, come on, I'm crazy. And she's just like,
down.
She's just like, sit down and take your pills.
Well,
she provides
the contrast. She provides the contrast to Nicholson, and that plus the one scene she has with the kid towards the end of the movie. I mean,
I'm going to tell your mother.
Destroys that kid. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wait, that actor, he was like, what was it? Bradley Dorff?
Brad Dourif.
Brad Dourif.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a great actor. That's
now I think that was his first film role, and
might have been.
Yeah. That was also the first film for like, or first known role for like Christopher Lloyd and Danny DeVito.
Danny DeVito, yeah.
Oh wow,
yeah, there were great actors in that cast.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. That's a great movie.
Fun fact,
I feel like I need to watch that again.
Yeah, you probably should. And fun fact, and hey, John Burns. Oh, also, I want to say early in the chat, my friends Groundhog 2010 and Tabby Wolf is showing up as well. FY, that's the same Tabby Wolf that like organized the charity Twitch weekend things that I promoted on this like a stream and on your channel before as well. So hi, Tabby. You can blame her for being a Twitch streamer for all the ills of that as well. But like Go ahead, Nick. I forgot my other point. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No problem for it.
I was just gonna say, so the Blue Alien People movie is back in theaters for a little bit.
Yep.
And the next one is coming soon. And so now people are starting to talk about it a little bit. Mostly to say, oh, this movie had no cultural impact. This movie had no cultural impact. Yes, so little cultural impact that people have to constantly bring it up. But but really, Avatar discourse just brings out the worst in people, I swear. But one of the things that bugs me the most is like, oh, they're having sex with their hair. I hope they washed that before they stuck it in their horse. I mean, or after, whatever. I'm like, see, I'm a speculative biology nut. I love fictional worlds and fictional creatures. You know, people like designing these cohesive ecosystems. So I love like the animal design in Avatar, the chest nostrils, because most of them, you know, their digestive tract isn't connected to their lungs the way ours are.
Also, oh, it touched a horse. You pee out of that thing. I mean, come on,
right? Come on.
But look.
Because we're so clean.
I can't stand this misconception that the hair thingies are their genitals. It's like no. They have fun parts just like we do. That's why they wear loincloths. It's like the idea is that it's an incredibly common evolutionary trait on that world that like 2/3 of the creatures have an exposed part of their nervous system outside the body that they talk with. That's literally what they're doing, which speaks to some common ancestor like hundreds of millions of years back, and whatever their equivalent of like the Ordovician or the whatever it was. Anyway, I find this all fascinating. I just find this all fascinating, and I can't stand like when people just like don't get. I'm like, how would that even work? Do they think Navi babies explode out of the backs of their mother's skulls? It's
now you're attacking Greek mythology.
The thing about the Avatar discourse that I've seen, and I haven't paid like super close attention to it because I'm one of the people that doesn't give a shit about Avatar.
Same here. I don't care.
But it's a good reminder to me to just let people enjoy things.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because like I think some of the discourse I've seen is people, you know, maybe more on my side of the fence who don't really think it's that great of a movie. And they're like going after people who are excited about it or starting arguments with people who have nice things to say about it. And it's like, look, I I didn't even see it until we reviewed it for late seating like a year ago or 2 years ago, something like that, like
And you
relatively
did this
recently.
much.
And I thought, and I watched it, and I thought, well, it's about what I expected. You know, like it
Yeah,
looks
It's
good. Like
only okay. Directed by
some-
Ron Howard-ish.
Some good
Here's the
special.
funny thing.
Well,
Don't
no,
you
but
ever
my
insult James Cameron by comparing him to Ron Howard.
He's
So
a good
here's-
director.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. So these days we're used to movies that are like 3+ hours long. You know, we have shit like
Sadly.
Endgame, but back then, back when Avatar released, it was still kind of risky. So they chopped
sure.
little bits of it here and there, and it became a death by 1,000 cut situation. Because if you watch the extended edition, which is only available on Blu-ray for some reason, basically like the 10 best percent of the movie is in that. You get to see a bit of Jake's life on Earth before he even goes to that planet. You see the school where Grace taught Na'vi kids about Earth before everything went to shit. And there's so many like a couple seconds here, a couple seconds there of like facial expressions and just characters emoting and being more alive. And they cut all that shit out. It's like
it sounds like the director's cut of the Star Trek the Motion Picture.
It's
Because
just funny.
The director's cut makes infinitely more sense than the theatrical cut.
It's just funny because like the best like 5% of the movie that they cut out addresses all of the lack of character building stuff that you see on the theatrical version.
I'll take your word for it. When I watched it, I did not have the thought, oh, I wish this was longer.
It's not that much.
5% removed the
my
white
point
savior
is,
narrative.
it isn't that much longer.
It's
just that of all the stuff they chose to cut out, it was the most like essential character building stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, thankfully there is still a little of it in there, like how Jake, he's such a curious guy that he just has to touch everything.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, it's almost the same as was it Attack of the Clones was edited, where the only scene that draws attention to why Padme even likes Anakin is cut, but they keep all of the nonsense that is actually in the movie.
Yeah.
You know what? Revenge of the Sith has some great moments.
I hate sand.
Revenge of the Sith has some great character moments that were cut out. It's mostly Anakin and Obi-Wan at the start when they're boarding that ship. They're just goofing off. And I love that shit.
It's the shame of it is because of the way that certain producers and studio executives think with movies like that or like Avatar. They almost when they're cutting, for whether it be for whatever reason, they just think the movie needs to be shorter. They almost never cut action scenes. And that's almost always what should be cut. Like with especially with like the Star Wars prequels, like the Revenge of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith. If you're trying to shave that down, God, there's so much point. There's an action scene in Revenge of the Sith that begins and ends with the characters in the exact same spot, accomplishes absolutely nothing narratively. Like I think it's Anakin and Obi-Wan. They run onto like a launch pad. They have a fight with some people on the launch pad, and then they run back out, and it accomplishes nothing. And it's like 2 minutes of the movie where it's action, but nothing happens. Like, get rid of that. If you can keep some character stuff and get rid of that.
I mean, you can get it because that's the most expensive stuff. Once you've already put everything into it and look at the film, there's no way you can justify getting rid of that. But at the same time, it destroys the movie.
Yeah, it's
especially when you take away character interaction that the movie desperately needs.
Yeah.
It's funny because like the bit where they're on the elevator and they hack through all those droids, that is like after all that, they cut out a few seconds where the two just go like Roger, Roger. They're making fun of the way the droids talk. That is such
they're showing some personality. Which
this
is desperately in need there. Yeah.
Steve, this is the point I made a long time ago. I mean, when we go to A New Hope and we're in Obi-Wan's, crib, and Obi-Wan is reminiscing back on his days with the Clone Wars and with a very young Anakin Skywalker, and just that one line that he says with such authenticity, and he was a good friend.
Yeah.
We want to see why he was such a good friend. We want to see the foundation of that.
Right.
Fortunately,
That's in the Clone Wars animated series. That's in the Clone Wars animated series.
This thing you shouldn't have to see the animated series. They should have it like
Yeah,
in the
true.
movies. Which
Exactly.
you know, like, again, Revenge of the Sith.
Well, I
had
think you're
some
forgetting
good
that George
friendly
Lucas is just a bad writer.
But the funny thing is, like, the way they act in Revenge of the Sith, this funny banter they have. Where was that in Revenge of the Sith? I mean, in the previous movie, we should have seen them like already really good friends at the time.
Yeah,
but all they do is bicker, and
they seem like they already hate each other. And it's like, why should I care if one of these guys turns on the other? They hate each other anyway.
If anything, you'd think they'd be all gung ho in the second movie, and then start getting tense in the third movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Well, I mean,
Isaiah,
as
your
a
hands went up
director
for
and
a while.
screenwriter, George Lucas is really good at special effects.
Yes,
yes,
exactly.
he is. Isaiah,
Isaiah, go for it.
Go for it.
I wanted to I guess make a Star Trek like in the stream on a Star Trek note.
Okay.
So has anyone watched Hunt for Red October? Has anyone watched that
I
movie?
need to watch that.
Sure.
I played the game.
I just watched
years,
it a
but
couple
yes.
of weeks ago.
Now, cool. So if you've watched that and then you watch Star Trek 6 with the Klingon bird of prey like that can like cloak and still fire, doesn't Star Trek 6 borrow a lot of stuff from Hunt for Red October, or is it just me?
I think
can
so.
see the comparison in tense action scenes. Yeah.
Maybe not specifically from Hunt for Red October, but I think
it's a similar idea. Whether they're actually borrowing or not, I think is arguable.
Yeah, but it's a summary movie. Yeah, it's a cat and mouse sort of thing, though.
Both
exactly.
Nicholas Meyer, both of Nicholas Meyer's Star Trek movies are kind of
enemy
submarine
below.
movies.
It's the enemy below. It's what was that Star Trek episode? The first season, Balance of Terror.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I thought that Brave New Worlds did a marvelous take on. I thought their take on that was amazing.
Okay, so since
J.J. Abrams described the difference between his movies and the original shows is that the original shows were all submarine episodes.
Yes,
because the way they filmed, the constraints of the budget, they kind of had to.
Yeah,
couldn't have really big action set pieces. So they.
I've always enjoyed the explanation for why the characters always like warp down to the planet is because the ship was constructed in space, and structurally it's so like thin and flimsy in places that it would not withstand the gravity of most planets. It would just be shaken to pieces.
But the real reason that is very very expensive to like have a prop there.
As soon as the budgets were big enough to allow it, they forgot about that, and they were like, "Nah, screw it. Just have it go down onto the planet. Who cares?" Yeah.
The Star Trek TOS budgets back in 66, 67, 68, and 69 were at least twice what the average hour-long TV show was back in those days.
Yeah.
And Desi Liu was very upset about that crap.
Yeah. Well, and one of the, as expensive as it was, I mean, one of the major selling points for the show to the network from Roddenberry was that it wouldn't be super expensive. Like he would, if you read that original Star Trek pitch, he actually talks about that a fair amount, like, oh, don't worry, we're not going to have to make special effects shots of the ship landing because we're going to have a transporter that'll just teleport him right down. So we won't have, he's all, and we can.
Yeah, they spent all their money on tape to keep women's tits from falling out of impossible costumes.
they'll visit Earth-like planets so we can reuse standing sets and pre-made, pre-existing costumes. And, he was
and
really
actual
selling
locations on planet Earth.
Yeah. So, he was really selling how actually for a show like this, for a weekly sci-fi show, it won't be that expensive. But yeah, you're right. It did. I mean, for TV at the time, it was ridiculously expensive, which is one of the reasons why it just barely lasted 3 seasons.
So I did remember my point earlier back in the conversation about like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the 1975 film. It was actually produced by Michael Douglas and like someone else, and so that won Best Picture. And every time that like the movie wins Best Picture, the producers get the Oscar. So that's how Michael Douglas got his Oscar. Wasn't from acting, but it was from producing.
From producing,
So trivia thing there, because I watch like question a long time ago. I can't remember the movie Michael Douglas won an Oscar for. He didn't win it for acting. He was the producer for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And just like how Ben Affleck and Matt Damon won their Oscars for writing.
For screenwriting, yeah. And one of the reasons why Michael Douglas was a producer on the movie was because his dad, Kirk Douglas, had played the role on stage and originally was going to play McMurphy in the movie, but ended up not being able to do it. But Michael Douglas was already a producer. So after Kirk Douglas, wasn't going to play the lead anymore, they cast Nicholson, but Michael Douglas was still the producer. So yeah,
Jack Nicholson were playing Kirk Douglas. It worked though by the man.
It's one of those movies. Like, I mean, Kirk Douglas was a fantastic actor and could have obviously, I'm sure, would have been great. But God, it's difficult to imagine that movie with someone
like it would have been
Nicholson.
So different.
Nicholson so owned that character.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, he inhabited that character.
And then another point. Since we mentioned Star Trek Sis, we have to go we have to quote some Christopher Plummer and and let loose the dogs of war.
Yeah,
you
don't really know
Shakespeare
until you've heard it in the original.
So just say Shakespeare.
One of my Lauren, that's one of my favorite Star Trek lines ever. When you've never understood Shakespeare until you've read him in the original Klingon. I love that line so much.
I will pay him real money if it can shut up.
Nicholas Meyer liked to put lines like that in his Star Trek movies, where that lines that make you think, wait a minute, because that's the same movie where Spock says, an ancestor of mine maintained that once you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth, which is a Sherlock Holmes line. So it's like, wait a minute, is Sherlock Holmes Spock? What? Yeah,
Moriarty is in the from his mother's bloodline. From his mother's bloodline.
But I know Jason explained it by saying, look, just assume that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is an ancestor of Spock's. And it's like, okay, you can do it that way. But what I like the fact that it's inexplicable. I like the fact that it's like, wait a minute. So are they saying that Sherlock Holmes is real in the Star Trek universe? And he's like a relative of Spock's? But the Sherlock Holmes stories exist. Like, we know that they have holodeck program. Like, what is going on? Like,
well, it's true crime.
It's true crime. Yeah, exactly. But so that's what I love about
the actual diverging point where Star Trek universe diverges from ours.
Yes, exactly. The Sherlock Holmes stories are actually real.
Sherlock Holmes was an actual person.
Make that a TV show, Spock as Sherlock Holmes.
Absolutely, I would love that. I would love if Spock Holmes. Spock Holmes. I would love it if they would just with the new shows, even though the Strange New Worlds and Discovery are set in the same universe as classic Trek and everything. I would love it if they would just throw it all out the window and say, just do a spinoff where Spock becomes a detective. And have
Spock blocked.
Have Ethan Peck play Spock as
Private Eye.
Yeah, like who gives a shit?
Starts solving crimes.
Star Trek Nights.
The other thing,
yes, Star Trek Nights. He moves to Hawaii. He opens a detective agency.
Yeah, the other thing you want to have is a situation where you have more interaction between Spock and Data.
Yeah, there you go. Data just shows up inexplicably.
And reunification. The couple of scenes they had together, I thought were terrific.
That was a good, when Data does the neck pinch and Spock's like, not bad.
The Star Trek Law and Order. What about that?
Star Trek Law and Order, yeah.
I will suggest. I promise this is relevant. I'll explain in a second. I just played the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective games. They're like basically a sort of tabletop mystery where there's a setup and you go investigate and so they just made a sort of spin-off of that called Bureau of Investigation that's set in the H.P. Lovecraft universe.
Oh,
and it's pretty cool. But I played the first one with a friend and kind of went, well, the thing is, like, when it's kind of grounded in a sort of a Sherlock Holmes reality, I kind of know what sort of like inferences are admissible because it's kind of following like real world and detective story trope rules.
Yeah.
But when like the answers include, well, I don't know, is it mad scientist? Is it an elder god? Like introducing the supernatural aspect.
Or is it a black woman?
Makes you feel like like getting to the answer is more of a leap because you don't know what sort of what kind of inferences are like admissible in this fictional setting. I mean, except to the extent you go, well, it's something from a Lovecraft story, probably, but it's a little less fascinating. I feel like in a sort of sci-fi universe, and the question is like, well, why aren't there more great kind of mystery episodes of Star? There are a few, but they're not usually like the best ones in the series. And I think part of the problem is, right, we're used to kind of making up technology and scientific principles, and so unless you're very clear about what the rules are in advance, which is sort of hard to do, you sort of break the rule of fair mysteries where, look, the solution has to be something that in principle the viewer should be able to piece together, and not like, oh, well, we have a ship that can cloak without, or some weird techno answer renders it really unsatisfying.
You would need
beam off the main reflector dish.
You would definitely need to have like a rule in the writer's room of like no techno babble, or at least as little techno babble as humanly possible to make the story comprehensible. Because you can't just have it like, oh, he snuck into the room using a transmogrifier. Like you can't do that.
I think one of the best examples of that kind of writing in Next Generation is Measure of the Man. I mean, it's not exactly mystery, but it's absolutely law and order, and and it's one of those great episodes where nobody phones it in. I mean, Picard brings it, Riker brings it, Data brings it. The guy who's the guy claiming that Data is property. It's just a tour de force, and I love that. And it'd be great if they had a mechanism for doing more of it.
I was going to say some of the better Voyager episodes are actually in that vein where it's mystery episodes, and instead of it being a techno thing, it's just this particular roommate has psychopathic tendencies and has PTSD, or 7 of 9 is just is processing too much data and developing conspiracy theories. It's fairly mundane stuff instead of
and you can make the mystery hinge on choices the characters made as opposed to the technological stuff.
What happened, you need to figure out who did it and why.
That's what I love most about things like Star Trek. Is just I can't help but think about the socio-political implications of what happens, or this species or that species, or this culture or that culture. I'm sorry to bring it back to this, but watching something like Avatar recently, I have to wonder, what was the response on Earth? Because humans do know about the blue cat people. So what was the propaganda like? After that, big battle at the end of the first movie, where they're like, these dirty blue aliens, they killed your brothers, your fathers. We gotta hit them where it hurts.
They have a manifest destiny to go to that planet.
Exactly.
But that's the thing.
That's probably going to be a large portion of what the Measure of Water is going to be about.
The sequel.
The thing is, wouldn't there be some humans back on Earth who, once they see the footage, once they see like the pictures of the devastation, wouldn't they go like, hang on, there's something familiar about all this? Didn't we do this exact same thing like 500 years ago?
All the leftovers in his dishes, people will say, yes.
How many times are we going to do this?
So, can't they show like a couple shots of like protesters back on Earth? People with like picket signs on behalf of like save the blue alien people.
Well, the villain of the sequel is going to be the leftist who's trying to bomb the ships to stop them from doing the colonial.
That's the thing. That's the thing. Mark my words.
Here's a question, though.
It might be the third movie, it might be the fourth movie, but at some point there is going to be a human villain who is like, these people are so innocent. We have to prevent humanity's sickness from infecting the stars. We should go extinct. They're so much better than us. That's going to happen.
Yeah. There's a question in the midst of all this. In this particular particular time frame, what is the government of Earth or governments of Earth during the time of Avatar? Is there a vestige of democracy left, or have they gone completely autocratic?
They don't delve into this in the movie, only like in the books and stuff. That's kind of a failure. But the reason we need this unobtainium stuff is to melt it down into fuel for our ships, because we have to like leave Earth and find other planets to live on. We can't live on that planet because we can't even breathe its air. But it's like, if we don't get fuel for our ships, we're just gonna starve to death in space. So it's like, well, okay, if you need it that badly, just go like 100 kilometers over there. You don't have to uproot the indigenous people.
Yeah, my understanding of the unobtainium was it was a means to renormalize our ecosystem. That was my understanding of it. I may be completely off base on that, but
well, once the word unobtainium was like uttered, made my entire family just laugh out loud in the theater. And it was hard for us to listen.
Stipulated.
Yeah, it does, and honestly, I mean, it's interesting if you're intrigued by the story and by the world. I can understand wanting to know more, but like in terms of the way it functions in the movie, like it doesn't matter what they want it for. It's just the fact that they want it.
Yeah, that's why they don't delve into it that much. It's like who cares? But it's like you put a fictional species in front of me. And I can't help, like imagining how humans' encounters with them would go, because I'm just curious in ways. Again, why I love Star Trek so much, because it's all about that. And it's why I also think it's kind of a failure that like stuff like X-Men feels more out of touch as time goes on, because here you have a fictional minority that actually is dangerous in some ways, whereas real minorities, of course, are not.
Yeah, the metaphor definitely falls apart at a certain point.
Yeah, before we cut off here, one thing I wanted to mention, especially since my wife and I watched it yesterday, and I think it's just, I mean, as a first contact movie, I think it's a one of a kind, and that is Arrival.
Oh,
yes,
such a good,
so good.
Oh, such a good phenomenally good, and just how they approach it, and just Adams and Renner just are astonishing together, and whoever wrote that thing should have damn well gotten an Oscar if he didn't.
Yeah, it's like
such a good movie.
It's like, now these are aliens. They don't look like us. They don't communicate like us, but they still obviously feel things like compassion.
He did, by the way, win an Oscar for it.
Oh,
I think so. Yeah,
I
think so. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the most original science fiction ideas I have ever heard of.
Yeah, it is. It is. And the fact that, the story is driven by
nominated.
The story is driven by the challenge of finding a way to communicate. I love that they zero in on just that one element of, an interaction between two completely different life forms. And it's like, okay, no, how the hell are we going to, and it's not like, there's the classic Twilight Zone episode where it's like, well, we have to translate what they're trying to tell us. You know what I mean? And they figured out in half an hour.
And of course, the Alex Joneses of the world would pounce at it and spread conspiracy theories about the aliens. I also... This is a minor touch, but I really appreciate how they have this like internalized gravity where you can just walk up the inside of the spaceship. That is nice of them, considering they don't even walk.
Yeah, they're very considerate people,
Yeah, never mind the fact that the very fact they can control gravity like that, and yet you got some dumbasses over here say, "Oh, we're going to level these ships." Yeah. Tell me another one, right?
Well, they did kill Abbott.
Well, no, Abbott was dying. Whether Abbott recovered or not is unestablished.
But what I appreciate is that, they are very different from us. They don't even have like facial expressions or whatever, but they still clearly are emotional, compassionate beings that bond and all that. So that's all that really matters.
Absolutely. Yeah. Arrival's a terrific movie. Okay, so
it also gives us Jeremy Renner saying, "Do you want to make a baby?" Or let's make. Do you want? It's like that's seductive.
So yeah, I already put in all the plugs into the live chat. I won't go over them all again. But like Nick has a comic, I have Twitch and YouTube channel. Nick has a YouTube channel too. Isaiah Terra has a YouTube channel. Blah blah blah. John Farm is a part of another podcast. But like later on today, so it's just Alchemy within an hour or so. It's going to just be another show. But I invited on our friend Joanna Roberts. Yes, the same one that's always begging, put up the big most and always needs money to live. But like because it is Hispanic Heritage Month, I'm going to give Joanna Roberts the platform to talk about her Hispanic heritage, because on her mother's side she is Mexican and from traced back to the Aztecs as well. And also I'll have her explain why she absolutely hates the movie Road to El Dorado because of that as well.
Sounds like fun.
Fair.
And that's it.
Is that the one with the llama?
No, that's Emperor's New Groove,
which is pretty good.
That was pretty good.
And Social Emperor's New Groove avoided a lot of that by essentially just using the architecture as the only thing that is culturally of that area. That llamas.
Well, plus all the characters are of that culture.
Is just a buddy comedy.
Well, plus all the characters are of that culture. They're people of color. They're not like colonizers
It's voiced by David Spade, though. But yeah, but yeah, they'll be in within the next hour at like 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. UTC. So like, yeah, check it out. And like, Steve, what do you have coming up on the Steve Shives channel later on this week?
Well, funny you should ask. Tomorrow I have a political rant going up, and then Wednesday. I have another episode of my Best Superman Ever series where I will be talking about Superman Smashes the Klan. Which is a wonderful comic.
Superman going woke.
I know, woke Superman.
I love that comic's art style. It's so freaking cute.
Yeah. The art is fantastic. It's a great story. I
thought that was from the radio series.
It's based on that. Yeah, it's adapted from Clan of the Fiery Cross, which was the most famous storyline from the Adventures of Superman radio show. But very loosely adapted. The radio story is a lot different, but it has the same Superman fucks up some people in the Klan. That's the basic thing that they have in common. You want to see Superman fuck up some Klansmen? Yes, I do. Thank you. I would love to see that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's coming up on Wednesday.
Obviously not going to be in the Zack Snyder verse.
No. Oh yeah. How come Superman never fucks up Klansmen in Zack Snyder movies?
Last thing I want to mention about Superman and the Klan, I'm sorry,
please.
I love how the Nazis, I mean the Klansmen themselves are like, you're like the apex, you're everything we want to be. Why aren't you on our side? He's like, he's like, I'm an immigrant, dummy.
Yeah, exactly.
He's an illegal alien.
Yeah, he's an immigrant illegal alien. Yeah, so like that. Yeah. So that's coming up on Wednesday. Is your next Superman video? Yes. What else do you have coming up?
Later today, actually, in about 2 hours, myself and Dana and Jason Harding are going to convene to record some more podcasts. We're going to record the next episode of Late Seating, where we will be reviewing the 2009 Star Trek. And we'll also be recording a new episode of the Ensign's Log with all three of us. But you don't get to hear those yet. You get to hear those.
Not yet.
I think the Late Seating comes out on Friday and Ensign's Log comes out a week from Friday. But yeah, so that'll be fun. And then I think, actually, I'm still writing it, but I think week after next, I'm going to do a video about the movie Morbius, because I watched that on Netflix a couple of days ago, and I was like, okay,
that movie was thoroughly mediocre too.
I was like, I have questions about Morbius and about the internet's fascination with it. And I will be pondering these questions in that video.
I think you will stick with She-Hulk.
I'm super curious what Jason's opening is going to be. I wonder if it's going to be like 2 minutes of just pondering the Starship Enterprise. Silence.
People aren't really interested in Morbius. We're making fun of it.
It's ironic.
And yet Sony didn't realize that, and they brought it back.
I know. Sony was like, "Oh, you like the movie? You like the movie? You want to see the movie again?
Can we go to Bob a third time?"
We didn't like it the first time, you dipshits.
No,
it's got Jared Leto.
You want you to lose more money by sending film reels to theaters.
We're making fun of you. We're making fun of you.
So on Wednesday, do you have another Hilda Reluctantly or Trek Reluctantly?
Yes, Trek Reluctantly on Wednesday. We are watching the second half of the Hilda movie, and that'll be our last Hilda watch, because that's it. And I think there's gonna be a third season of Hilda come out eventually, but it's not out yet. So it's the last Hilda watch, and then week after next is gonna be another Star Trek one. So yeah, but yeah, that's
this Friday. It's also the next
Friday is Ask Away. So yeah, so if you're a patron or a member, the prompt for questions will go out tomorrow. If you want to get your question in before the show. So yeah, yay. And this, I mean, speaking of patrons and members, this is something that I do every month with my Patreon patrons and channel members, just to say thank you and to hang out and have a good time. So if you're watching this and you like my YouTube stuff and this looks like fun and you're not a patron or a member, please consider becoming one. You can do that by going to patreon.com/Steve Shives or by clicking the join button to become a channel member. And the benefits of each are equivalent. So whichever one works best for you. Either way, I really appreciate the support, and I appreciate everybody being here with me today once again. So thanks everybody for watching. Thanks to all of you who are here in the call with me, and we will call this show to an end and do it again in about a month. So thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.